All right. Well, good evening, good day. Welcome back, Chairman, and everyone listening. We are continuing our podcast that we started last week, this topic on the guitar world. And they came out with a bunch of really cool topics, and we are just going to continue. So we did the first 10 last week as a slight recap. I'm just going to run through them really quick. But before I do, would either of the other chairmen like to say anything? Any wise words before we dive in?
Wise words, no pressure. I know that let's see, wise word of the day: don't count your pedals before they're unboxed. A popular take on the don't count your eggs before they hatch or something like that, or chickens before they lay. I can't remember how it goes, but I think that's what I'm going to go with today. My wise words today: don't count your pedals before they're unboxed. Does that count? Is that what you were after?
I think that's what I was looking for. I think that's what I was looking for. How
Mason,
about you, Mason?
Any wise words?
Yeah. Any wise words? Or
unwise? Whatever. That one.
That's only slightly less known than the keep your nose to the tube screamer.
Yes. The old nose to the TS9.
Yeah. So stay focused out there, kids. You always want to have a sharp mid-range right at the nose bridge. No wise words, but I'm confident that in my lack of wisdom this morning that we're going to be enlightened by the continuation of this conversation from last week, because there's another 10 sort of what I guess you would call them sort of tenets according to this journalist. And so I'm anxious to dive in and see what they are, and we can create some dialogue between the three of us as to why that might be right, why that might be wrong. But I would actually say some of these articles are really poorly written. Mm-hmm. This one I don't think falls into that category. I think that there actually are some legitimately good suggestions that have been made here. And so, I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just pulling up the article. So I'm gonna just go over briefly, just the first 10, just the topics.
Yeah, just read the quick fire 10 points.
Rapid fire. So number 1 was don't overlook mainstream pedals, which was a great one. And like I said, if you haven't listened to that one, please go back and listen. Find your tribe. And then we had revisit old pedals when changing amps, it can be a big deal. Get a good pedal board. Don't rule out using delay straight into the amp. Try an always on boost. Put fuzz first. It says mostly, but the rule of thumb is fuzz first. Try using modulation subtly. Try analog. It's often worth it. Number 10 was dial in the settings at gig volume, which we definitely ended on that topic of sometimes that's not realistic. But moving on to number 11 is use the pencil analogy. And let's be honest, I don't know what this pencil analogy is, but we're going to find out.
You don't know the pencil analogy?
Come on, Brian.
It's only slightly less known than the keep your nose to the tube screen.
Oh, yeah. Well, is it like that? Like if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's green, run and scream. Is it that same type of analogy? No?
I've never heard the green run and scream.
I thought you were going somewhere else.
I thought you did too. Yeah.
Oh,
wow. No. We're starting off with some absolute bangers today. This is good.
Maybe it's a northern thing. That's what they always said about snow. If it's certain colors, depending on the
I thought you were talking about what to flush down the toilet and what not to flush. That's where I thought you were
what's
going.
Green? Is it antifreeze?
I have no idea. It's definitely not green Kool-Aid. I will tell you that. I don't know. It says... Anyway, it says some overdrive pedals such as Fritones, Dumble have abundantly crisp and clarity to help you punch through a mix. Others, such as a J-Rocket 45 pedal, offer a good blend of definition on one hand and flattering compression on the other. Guys, I need glasses reading all this. Fuzz pedals, meanwhile, often offer messy, smeary, splattery sounds when you want to go wild. I'm just going to paraphrase some of this. Having all of these pencil presence on your pedalboard means all the bases are covered. Okay, so the pencil analogy is basically, for my take, I'm not going to read it all, is it's saying having these staple items that will do different options. That's what I take, but I'm curious of your guys'.
I don't understand this. Do people?
If you're an artist, you have different types of pencils for different. You have one for shading, one for. I mean, back when I lived in Miami, Florida, and I was doing characters on the causeway there, I had 3 pencils. One for shading, one for definition, and kind of an all-arounder. And that's kind of what we're going for here. You got your fuzz.
Now, you were doing primarily nudes, if I recall correctly.
Well, on the causeway, as I called it, being a Floridian, obviously, none of this is true. Yes, no one was really willing to do that. I offered, but no. So usually I was just the one in the nudes doing the characters.
Heavy shading.
Yeah. Made it to the police station real quick.
Gosh.
So yeah, different drives or categories for different jobs. Rather than having, as much as I approve of this, 3 or 4 TS9s, maybe you have different overdrives or gain stages for different roles on your board. A splattery fuzz, a boost to cut through the mix, and then something that adds a bit of mids like a TS9 is kind of the idea here.
I've never heard of this pencil.
I have not. I'm not either.
It seems like it's really odd.
Well, I mean, I think something like this analogy, while funny, none of us have ever heard it, I could see this same type of thing being used for something that does multi effects. So like getting like an HX Stomp or an H90 where it does a wide variety. So you have that one sound that can do your shading of, whatever, like the pencil analogy.
This is going to be hard to keep going because none of us are artists, right?
No, none. I mean, my son draws Spider-Man and Star Wars all the time, but that's
good choices.
That's about it. It's the best. But like, I could see like this type of sound or something doing. It could be like, okay, well, it's going to be directed towards a chicken picking guitar part, but then this sound could also be directed towards a guitar solo. So I understand the analogy of it. I think it can get kind of confusing personally. I think some people will just be like, I have to. And it's like sometimes you don't have to. I guess it could be utilized. have zero experience, so Mason, you probably could help. Like a Nashville experience, like those guys, right? They have to go into a studio kind of with their gear ready, I'm gonna say. Do they typically have to be ready for anything, or they kind of know prior to what they're gonna need? I don't have a Nashville board. I know you do, and you've worked with a lot of those guys. Like, would something like this analogy work for them? Like, would this?
Yeah, I don't know that any of them would characterize it as the pencil analogy, but I think usually what they would say is that they would have, which I think is what the author of this means, is that that you would have various flavors of overdrive. You'd have something that's maybe more mid boosted, and maybe something that's more mid scooped. Maybe you'd have something, brighter, darker.
We need a food analogy.
Asymmetrical clipping, so a lot of the Nashville guys kind of staple things that you see a lot on their rigs. You see Nobles, which is kind of adjacent to the Tube Screamer, but a little bit different EQing. And it has more of a symmetrical clipping going on. You'll see Rats, in a lot of cases for kind of more the heavier distortion, more scooped, more asymmetrical clipping. You'll see the Mustortion, which is kind of a smoother, kind of higher gain pedal. You'll see the Greer Lightspeed, which is, kind of a low to mid gain sort of overdrive.
Yeah.
These sorts of things sort of fill out the tones differently. Excuse me. The RC booster, for kind of real low gain, kind of boost tone shaping stuff. So I think that it's really just saying you have just a bunch of different colors on the palette, and that you can choose from kind of based on how you want to color the tone, or in their analogy, shading with different pencils. I think it's all kind of the same thing. I think, if you were to rewrite the title, it would just be like having multiple flavors or colors of overdrive.
Yeah.
And I think most people know that and do that. I just think that title probably throws some people off. So like, what's the pencil in it?
Yeah.
Or at least I do. Maybe people in the art world know
They
this.
just
I mean,
know.
tell us below. Tell us in the comments if you're listening. We'd love to.
If you're an
we would
artist,
love
do you
to-
talk about the pencil analogy?
But I also would say that I definitely do come across it, and I've been guilty about this myself. I'll find an overdrive that I like, and I don't know what it's based on right off the bat. I just, plug it in and I connect with it. And then turns out the reason I'm connecting with it is because I just tend to like blues breakers, or I tend to like tube screamers, and it's in the category that I already know and am comfortable with. And then I can very quickly end up with 2 or 3 of the same circuit, let's say 2 or 3 different companies' takes on a blues breaker circuit on my board. And so I like all these overdrives. I connect with all these overdrives. And when I stack them, I can get different sounds. But in reality, I have only one type of pencil or one color on my board. And so I think it is, it sounds obvious in principle. Yeah, get different types of colors and textures on your board. But sometimes it's easy to fall into the trap of, I just have 3 tube screamers in different packages. And so that's where I think, like for me, as a more maybe pertinent example, is I typically wouldn't put a fuzz on my board. And so I would usually go with maybe something that is a tube screamer, something that's a clon, and then something that's maybe more of a boost or an EQ, and that'll really cut through the mix if I want it to. And so I need to be purposeful in that instance because I'm already down one of my pencils, being the fuzz. And so I think just knowing and doing even just a little bit of, I don't want to say research, it's kind of a boring word. Know what the circuits are that are on your research. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Know what kind of circuits you're playing with. And not that should determine, just because the research said, I hate the pedal, but it's a different kind of color. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But I think you will find you'll get a much broader array of sounds available to you if you know what you're working with and how to get the most out of it because of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I completely agree. Oh, do we want to move on? Let's move
past the pencils.
Set our piece. All right. Well, kind of like I heard Grant, you said it subtly. You talked about make it a food analogy. So this next topic really does kind of come into a food analogy. It's a 4-course meal, you would say. But really, it's a 4-course of 4 knob drives work well, which I would agree. I think some of them, there are pedals that you get where like it's a 3 knob. It says, well, we love the classic 3 knob overdrives like the TS9 Tube Screamer. Sorry, my article just refreshed. There we go. Let's start it again. Man, this article keeps refreshing on me. Okay. We love the classic 3 knob overdrives like the TS9 Tube Screamer, we've come to really value 4 knob overdrives that offer EQ, control over both bass and treble, or otherwise expanded tone, sculpting powers, as well as gain and level. I would say, I think 4 knob drives are great. I think a lot of people will just kind of I don't care how many knobs are on there. I'm just gonna start tweaking until I can get the sound. So like having an extra EQ knob for me, I think is helpful because there are some guitars that sound really great, or like, man, I really wish this, because you could roll off all the bass and add some more treble, and it may just not be clean enough for like my White Falcon or something. But having like a 4th knob on there, like to do overall EQ, I think it's you're expanding how much tone option you have. Personally, I think they're great. I mean, whatever makes you happy.
Can I push back on this?
I would love it.
I am very aware. I'm speaking from my personal experience, not from the broader best practices. So this is my bias is going to come through loud and clear. But again, thinking through the many times I've sat in front of let's say a new amp with a familiar guitar, and then I have a couple pedals in between. I'm trying to find a sound. So I'm in a scenario where I'm trying to dial in a sound. I'm trying to think of the times that maybe this has happened. Again, from my experience, I put a pedal down on the ground trying to get a good overdrive sound into this amp. And I just don't find myself, I wish there was another knob rather than just tone control. I wish I had treble and bass. It's usually like the pedal works with the amp or it doesn't. And I will tweak the tone knob to find a sound. But typically, if the foundation of the pedal isn't working with that amp, a little bit of extra tweakability on the EQ isn't going to be the difference maker. I'm going to swap out another pedal and try a different I'll try a different approach to find an overdrive sound. I don't know if I would love it if you guys would just disagree with me on this, but I do not find myself wishing, for the most part, that I had the fourth knob and that's going to be the difference maker. It's usually the foundational sound of the pedal to begin with that is really going to work or not work with the amp.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mason, what do you think? Am I full of crap or?
No, it was the first thing I thought of is there sort of like an inherent EQ that's sort of baked in to most circuits, if you're following the prototypical circuit style. And there's sort of limitations to where you can move the cue or affect the frequencies in a way that's even actually like pleasurable to hear within that framework. So just adding controls doesn't necessarily take you to a place where you're going to get a more pleasing sound, because again, there's kind of like a range typically of the kind of, pillar circuits that most of us usually gravitate towards. And if you deviate too much from that, then they don't really sound like themselves anymore. So, there are devices that were designed with 4 controls, and that's how it's been presented to us and how we're used to hearing it, and it's great. A lot of pedals don't do well in that presentation. Sometimes you'll see like maybe slight variations where, like, for example, with the Nobles, a really common thing you'll see people do is add a bass switch so that you can, boost or cut bass beyond what the standard was. But they're more fixed instead of it being variable, where you can kind of slide between all these different places. So I think that there are maybe cases where a mod like that would facilitate, equally like the Blues Driver.
Yeah,
has that. The popular mod that like Keeley did was that fat switch, but it wouldn't really be like, let's put a bass knob on this thing, because it's not it's not doing what we want. I don't know.
Yeah.
My thought is that, again, there are certain circuits that just, there's limitations to how much you can take. I think that this piece of advice, I think what they're trying to get at is to say it can be nice to have some expanded EQ capabilities on certain pedals. And sure, it's nice if that's like within the capabilities of what the product is. But if it's like a tube screamer, or if it's something that's really standardized, I don't think adding an extra control to separate treble and bass, or treble and middle and bass, is always going to have the effect that you think it is. I think what this should actually say is use an EQ pedal, because that will allow you to do that on any pedal, and it won't change the characteristic of the internal pedal itself. You'll be doing it after the fact, and you can get a lot more tone shaping, and it doesn't affect the properties of the pedal itself. So if I were to amend this, I would say number 12 is use an EQ pedal.
Hey, I like that.
Yeah, I know. I think that's
or
great.
else.
Or
that's how it should.
Or else. Dot. Consequences implied.
All right. Well, moving on. Number 13.
So use an EQ pedal or else.
Yeah, or else. Well, we'll leave that up to your imagination. Have number 13. Have a grab and go board. If you're into pedals, and you may well have plenty. Have a pretty comprehensive main pedal board stuffed with everything you need, plus a few things you only ever use now and then. That's great, but we also found it's worth making up a smaller board, lighter board with no more than 3 core effects on it for those times you just want to jump in the car and join in with a jam down the pub.
The pub.
The pub. We'd recommend.
Are you going to the pub quite a bit there, Brian?
I am not. The pub.
It's more like when's Brian not at the pub? That's a better question to
ask. We'd recommend a 3-pedal lineup of all-rounder overdrive, tremolo, plus a delay or reverb, a smile, isolated power supply, blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, no, I think stuff like this. I think it's really handy if you're to do that. Honestly, if I'm jumping in playing at a pub, I'm gonna just bring my stuff, my normal stuff that I'm used to. I get the whole simplicity, but that's also where one of our sponsors comes in, the Neural DSP, the Nano Cortex. For me, that is literally my grab and go thing. Like, it's that one unit. I have it with a MIDI controller, but I've actually been putting it into like that little slot inside my Duesenberg case where like it's under the neck. Like, I've literally just been fitting it in there as like a just in case if someone shows up and something's not working, or if my stuff isn't working, I still have an option. That's funny enough my grab and go, and it has a ton of stuff packed in. So I encourage it. I think it's cool. I wouldn't say go nuts and be crazy about it. Just like think like logical. But I've seen like this one guy, a friend of mine in Oklahoma, he doesn't even have a tuner. It's like an overdrive. It was a fuzz, an overdrive, and I think it was like a slapback delay, and that was it. And hey, that was what he liked. So I definitely, I think if that's up your alley, great. Personally,
I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a cool idea. I think the reason I would have a grab and go board is probably less about it being small and easy to transport, although that's a big perk. I think the thing I like about a grab and go board is you are forced to play differently. So if I have an overdrive, a tremolo, and a reverb, to take their example, I will play the same songs, because I'll have to, very differently than if I have a chorus, 3 different shades of my pencil of overdrive in my pencil case. If we're going to just really drive this analogy home.
Let's do it.
And I have my delay, my reverb, maybe it's run in parallel, and a switcher with like, you have to approach how you play the guitar differently because of the options you have in front of you. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of a grab and go, is you can't be the same guitar player. You have to shift and adjust. And I think if it's not going too far or taking this way too far off topic, whenever you are forced out of your comfort zone as someone that's doing a creative pursuit, you find that you have skills and abilities, or that you have to develop skills and abilities that you don't have when you're in your comfort zone, and you can kind of just go into autopilot. And I think that's always a good thing. Whenever I've been pushed out of my comfort zone, I realize, like, I have to engage a different part of my brain, and it's a very positive, uncomfortable, stretching experience, and I'm a better guitar player because of it. And so I think the grab and go board I think it's beneficial in more ways than just transportability, being able to move this thing around. Mason, you obviously have a few different boards in the shop, and ones that you use.
I don't know if I have anything that's quite this grabby.
Grabby or goey. But like, even if you have your Nashville board and maybe a blues board.
That's not grab and go. Neither of those are grab and go.
But you would have to slightly kind of change how you approach songs, right? Because the pedals or the palette in front of you has changed, I would presume. I don't know what pedals are on each board off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But.
Well, in the cases that I go and do, like, let's say a blues jam, I actually normally take my Eric Clapton Strat, because it has the kind of built-in boost and overdrive in the guitar. And that can be really handy if, the changeover really has to be like, I'm just plugging in the guitar, like swapping cables with somebody, basically.
Yeah.
And in those cases, I take the Clapton, because it's really, easy to kind of get louder if you need it to be louder quickly, and more distorted if you need it to be more distorted quickly. it may not have, you won't have delay probably unless you bring a delay pedal, but
or you play all your notes.
I actually don't have anything like that. If I'm playing small gig, as like what Brian is saying, I will use the Quad Cortex or the Nano. And I've said this in some of our videos, and they're not sponsoring this episode, but that D'Addario power, like pedal power expand series battery thing is great for that. Will power the Nano Cortex for like 4 hours.
Awesome.
Which is pretty incredible given like the current, demands of that pedal. And some of the times I'll have issues, like if I go and play just like local places where you'll have power issues, like with the wall, and this sort of absolves all that issue, and takes away any of the issues with the power. And sometimes with digital stuff too, it can get weird. So this is great. I just have that in there, and I can pretty much go like a entire set, and I can take my amps with me, and they've expanded all the effects in the Nano Cortex. So there's pretty much nothing you don't have.
Literally.
It may not be your prized, 81 tube screamer, but like the major food groups are all there, and they all sound pretty great, and that's kind of a path of least resistance, I think.
I think you can capture your 81 tube screamer now into the Nano too.
You could capture it, but even if you were just going with everything that's baked in, I mean, it's pretty comprehensive at this point.
Yeah, that the new update when Ryan, our guy, our point guy, the go-to, he told me about it, and I was like, oh man. I was like, that's great. Just hearing just the updates and stuff that they were coming out with, and removing the fixed block of like that noise gate and stuff really just opened up the door to a lot of like this exact thing. So I definitely agree. Well, moving on, number 14, could one pedal do it all?
Oh boy.
Is this like the one ring to rule them all? Is this the same type of concept? I mean, it says, following up on the last tip, could one pedal do all the basics? Obviously, compact multi-effect units such as a Line 6 HX Stomp are designed to do just that. What do you guys think?
Mason, I'll let you start this one off.
I mean,
what's the analogy for the one to rule them all, Brian?
That's the Lord of the Rings.
Is that a Lord of the Rings thing?
Yeah,
I think it's Harry Potter. I'm pretty sure it's Harry Potter.
I think Gandalf said that in Star Wars on the Interceptor. On the way to Mordor at Hawksworth.
Because weren't you Lord of the Rings at TGI Fridays, Brian?
That was me.
1,000 onion rings in 10 minutes.
That was me. That was. You should have seen me.
I was Lord of the Rings.
That was my teenage days when I had the energy and metabolism to eat that much food.
Remember Metabolism? That was good.
That was great. Now I eat a chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A and I'm like, I'm full for a week.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely think there is a place. I had the HX Stomp. I've had the H90. Obviously, I have the Quad Cortex and the Nano Cortex. Like, there are units that do it all. I have a Fractal. I have an Axe FX3. Like, I have a bunch of different stuff that has done, can do all of them. I think if you are a tinkerer, I think if you enjoy pedals, I don't think all-in-one on your, like, as your only thing on the board is the thing. I know some people are like, I just want to bend down and turn the knob. I don't want to have to touch a screen and like go. Like, I get that. I think if you are in a pinch, your rig goes down and you need something. What did I say? I think if you're in a pinch and your rig goes down, I thought you were
saying I just want to bend over and turn the knob.
Oh, I was not going to say that.
Sorry, I have the sensibilities of a teenager.
You're good. No, so I think a one pedal to do it all is a good backup option. There are guys that are on tour that are using this kind of stuff. Like I don't know what his name is. He's a Spanish guitar player. He runs an HX Stomp with a disaster area micro, like a little switcher, and he has all of his effects built in, and that's all he uses. That works great.
A guy from a guitarist from Spain uses it like this.
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember what his name is. He
not Marco.
No, he does a bunch. He has this Gretsch signature. It's like a white guitar. Man, I can't remember his name now. I can't
Chris
remember.
Rocha?
Yeah, that name.
Well,
Yeah.
I think he's Mexican.
Mexican. Sorry.
I think he's from Texas.
Spanish.
He's from
Okay.
Texas. He's from your neighborhood.
I am so sorry about that, Chris, if you're listening.
I think he's from Texas.
Is he from Texas?
I don't
have a lot of experience with him, so I do apologize for
He's a good guitar player.
Yeah, he's a great player, and like he does that kind of stuff. Like but he's also traveling to different stuff, and he has his his kickback. So I get those applications for it. I think on if you're out and you're touring all these consecutive dates, it can be handy to have something like that. But I also think, I've seen musicians have a quad Cortex and an HX Stomp and an H90 and running it with pedals. Like, I think we just like pedals personally. I enjoy the Axe Effects or the quad Cortex because for me, I don't have 6 to 8 hours sometimes a week sitting down messing with my tones. Like, I've dialed in my tones, they all sound great. I can build a set, I can tap in my tempo on my MIDI clock and everything, and that's it. Like, I'm not trying to experiment. I don't have the time to do that kind of stuff right now. But I think from a standpoint, I think it's a great application to have, but I don't think it's for everyone personally.
I think it's a tool in the toolbox. I think a lot of my customers, they have been down the Axe Effects route, and they say it's quite complicated and there's almost too many options. So there are so many options for tweakability in the sense that when you have a tube screamer in front of you, you have 3 knobs to play with, and they typically don't move. Like, once you set them, that's it. And I think when the options are there, and Axe Effects, I think in my mind, is a great example of this. Like, Axe Effects is a great unit, but it is so complex as far as if you want to use everything on it, you will never play guitar. You will always be programming and tweaking. And I think that's a problem. But if you're able to just, like you said, like what you do, Brian, you're able to find your sounds, set them, and recall them when needed, and just get back to playing your instrument, then they're a great tool to have for consistency. And if you aren't worried about, I think, the inspiration side as much, I think pedals and having knobs in front of you that you can quickly access and not get lost down programming rabbit holes. I think a pedal board with individual pedals you'll find is more inspiring overall, and you'll probably get lost in playing guitar easier, which in my mind, where I'm at these days, that's the whole point. Like, I'm not getting ready for tours. It's not my goal, and it's not my thing. And so I want, typically I want some pedals or something that just allows me to get moving. But for touring guys especially, this stuff can be so handy. And if you're playing in church and you're playing, let's say, from 30 songs, and you play out of those 30 songs every week, you play 4 songs, and it kind of just goes through the cycle of this 30-song set list. Having something pre-programmed can be so handy and save you so much time. And that's where I think the neural stuff has been great. And the reason that I really enjoy the neural stuff is it's not nearly as complex as the Axe Effects, which I like. And it has the blend of me being able to capture sounds and amps that I already own and love. So I can blend the world of, like, line 6. You can obviously purchase IRs, and you can purchase sound, like sample packs, all that type of thing. But I can just capture the gear I already have dialed, like my amps and pedals, put it into the quad Cortex, and then now it's in their environment of sounds, pedals, amps, all this type of stuff. And so that's where I kind of enjoy that. I think it's a good blend of the two in that regard. And by no means are they the only ones that do it. They just kind of do it in a way that, for me, I can actually approach it, and I don't get lost for hours and hours just trying to figure out how it all works, So I think it's a tool in the toolkit. I think if budget and space and all this allows, I would always have something like a quad Cortex and my pedal board with individual pedals, because it's the best of both worlds. It's not practical for everybody, but I think you'll find a nice blend of all scenarios if you can do something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Mason, what do you think?
I typically don't subscribe to this. I mean, other than what I had talked about in terms of like, if you just need something really quick, kind of the grab and go thing with the Nano or the Quad. I think of this more as like having utility pedals in your pedal board, like an M5 or an H9 or an H90 or the HX1, where it's like one pedal that can be used for a million different things. And especially if you have a programmable rig, and you have MIDI and you have switchable order, this now becomes infinitely more usable, where you can say, I need a univibe here, I need a whammy here, I need whatever the fill in the blank thing is. You can use that as such an asset to kind of build sounds without having to expand the footprint of the pedal board to accommodate all those kind of fringe things. I love that application. I think that's really smart for touring folks and I think even session folks to a degree. Like I think Bukovac has talked about, you know, what he does with the H9 when he gets into a session and they want some sounds that are kind of more off, you know, kind of a little bit more off the beaten path. He'll hand the H9 app to the producer and he'll let him sort of, you know, create the mix of the sound, you know? And so I thought that's sort of an interesting thing where you can almost like put the ball in their court of how they want the sound to be.
Yeah, no, I mean that's I've done some work with Mark Lettieri and he has like an M5 or something like that. I think it's the M5. That's like
he probably should get the HX1. I think it's quite an upgrade.
Yeah. Well, I think there was he has the HX1. He does now have the HX1, which is a great pedal. But for the longest time, you know, putting the M5 on the board, it used a funky power. Like it had to be a certain type of like power requirement, and I would ask him.
Well, he plays a lot of funk music, so I think
funky power, funk music, it all works. Power. The M5's always broke, though. I don't know if you guys had this, but I had 3 of them.
Yeah,
2 of them broke with the same header issue, like the cable that connects the 2 PCBs. Always broke.
You weren't funky enough.
I was not.
That's what happens. That's what happens when you don't bring the funk.
Bring it.
Simple as that.
Yeah. So I definitely think something like this can be a really great tool. Like for me, like having I have a Mastermind GT controller, so I have 1,009 presets. That's over, if I really think about it, 5 presets per song. That's over 200 songs in my library.
That's not nearly enough.
Nearly enough. And let's be honest, especially for me in a church standpoint, we're only playing probably 25 to 30 songs in that year. We're recycling the same songs over and over. So it's not much reprogramming. It's more of just like maintenance and stuff. So like a new song gets added, which most of the time it's just labeling the names. So yeah, I definitely think it's a really cool idea. I love that idea about handing the producer the iPad to really tweak the tone. We are going to move on to number 15. We're halfway there, but before we do, I do want to throw it to one of the guys to talk about our amazing sponsors that make this possible.
And I am that guy.
That Grant is that guy. I didn't know who it was, so I was just throwing it up into the air.
Well, I want to talk about 3 sponsors today. The first one is the guys over at the Guitar Sanctuary. The Guitar Sanctuary sells music gear. They are a music store, brick and mortar. And brick and mortar stores are fewer and far between these days. But the reason the Guitar Sanctuary is sticking around is because they, firstly, sell guitar gear. Why wouldn't you want to stick around? And bricks. But they are very good at what they do. And so they have obviously a whole range of different guitar gear, electric, acoustic, bass, but they are in McKinney, Texas, and they know what they're talking about. So if you want to text in with a question, you can text them. All the info's on their website, guitarsanctuary.com. You can give them a call, show up if you're in the area, and try out the wide array of things that they have there, including most of the gear that we talk about on the show, but especially today, they are getting a lot of love. Neural DSP can also be found at the Guitar Sanctuary. And you can, Neural being our next sponsor, I'm going to do a not so smooth transition here. Neural DSP being our next sponsor, do a whole range of plugins And so I know Brian, Mason, and I all use these plugins, and there are too many to list here today. I've been using most recently the Corey Wong archetype, and it's been great. And so you can put this straight into your DAW. They are allowing more and more with future updates, being able to use the existing plugins on something like the Quad Cortex. So you could use it across a range of different platforms within your music system that you have. And then they have obviously a couple pieces of hardware, which we've been talking about today, the Nano Cortex and Quad Cortex, which are multi-effects, profiling, easy to use pieces of gear where you can actually create sounds that I was actually talking to a customer about this past week, creating sounds on the Quad Cortex specifically that is very difficult to do without. So being able to route wet effects in parallel, if you want to start experimenting with wet, dry, wet, or a parallel stereo rig, you can do that in 30 seconds and dial that up. All this stuff that in reality, if you had to do it all with hardware, is definitely doable, but is much more involved if you don't have something like a Quad Cortex or something like that. So Neural DSP is offering a whole bunch of great options with plugins, software and hardware. If you want to save on the plugins, use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, and you'll get 30% off your order at neuraldsp.com. And as well, I will say, Neural DSP making all their hardware, Quad and Nano Cortex. If you have questions about this, go to our Facebook page, Chairman of the Boards. Ask us questions, and we will be happy to answer them because there's a lot that these can pull off, and sometimes you just need to get a bit more info on them. So ask us at Facebook, our Facebook group, Chairman of the Boards. Check out Neural DSP at neuraldsp.com. Lastly, BTPA or Bestronix. I was just emailing Brad again this week. I'm sure you guys have as well. I email him weekly. Just having a chat with Brad. This week I was getting more XLR plugs. And basically, Bestronix is just going to be one of your best friends if you have any piece of hardware that relates to a pedal board. If you have a pedal board and need cables, go to Bestronix. If you need dual lock or DC cables or raw parts, as in like any length of cable to make your own patch cables, plugs, if you need advice, if you need looms, if you need a rack belt, Bestronix is going to be able to help you out with anything pedal board related, and then many more things as well. But we're talking pedal boards today. So talk to Brad at Bestronix, btpa.com. And again, if you want to save money, use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, and you will get 10% off your order at btpa.com. Brian, I'm going to throw it back to you.
When you said need advice, my ears perked up, but then you said pedal boards. I was like, oh, so you can't give me advice about like a 401k or something. So I got a little excited.
Brad could.
I wouldn't be surprised. No, they are great. They actually, I'm building some very last minute rack builds, and he was out of town, so I did get his out of office email response, which I was like, dang it. And within, I think 20 minutes, he responded to me and he's like, hey, I'm out, but here is another guy. So like, I can't, speak highly
Brad's
about how
not good
great
at sticking to his out of office replies. I always get that as well.
Are any of us
right away?
But it's like you go on vacation. I'm like, I'm shutting off my email, but then you're still checking your email.
Next thing you know,
not for you, Brian. Not for you.
Not for me. All right, so moving on. Number 15, use your volume control. Back in the days of non-master volume amps, guitars such as Roy Gallagher used to adept. Sorry, guys. I need glasses at using the guitar's volume control to manipulate the gain of a cranked amp. I would say yes. I think there are. It kind of depends. For me, I'm not one of these guys that would do that, but I have seen people like Josh Smith, Andy Timmons, Joe Bonamassa, all these guys. I have seen them. When they're playing, they'll mess with their guitar and they'll get it really, really, quiet, or they'll manipulate the tone coming out. So I definitely think it is a really cool concept and idea. I don't think it's for everyone. I did have a circumstance when I was at a guitar shop I was visiting, and I watched one of the sales guys, like, basically it was just like, just use your volume, and the guy was like, oh, I just want to do volume swells, and he's like, well, just learn to do them with your guitar. But it wasn't like the same concept. So I think in this circumstance, depending on your genre and stuff, it could be really handy. It's not for me, but I am curious of your guys' thoughts. If you do this to manipulate the tone, like I said, I've seen it done. It's a cool idea.
I don't have many black and white takes on guitar, or many things in life for that matter. I think there's always a lot of nuance. This is something I think every guitar player should learn how to do. Whether or not you use it for every single song, but this is probably one of the most effective ways to adjust your tone on the fly and get a whole, like, you have two overdrives, let's say. You normally use two overdrives. And you can play overdrive 1 by itself, overdrive 2 by itself, or both on at the same time. If you add your volume controls into that, you're adding another 2 to 3 layers of sounds that you can access at any point. I think this is a skill. I don't know what it's called when you use your pinky to adjust the volume while you keep playing, but it's up there with, in my mind, it's as important as learning how to alternate pick. This is learning how to adjust your tones, textures, the ability to adapt your sound to the context at hand. I think this is very high on the list of must-know techniques. That's about as strongly worded as I can get before passing off to Mason. What do you think?
I like it. What do you think, Mason?
I'm in agreement that you certainly need to use your volume control, if for no other reason, to get different sounds in the kind of color palette.
Sorry, pencils
that exists within other pedals.
Pencils.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. If you want to,
let's make this a thing.
If you want your shades, you have to. So, like, I think that people that use fuzzes understand this. I think, because there are several different sounds in a fuzz, especially a germanium fuzz face or silicon fuzz face, that can exist based on where the volume pot is set.
Yeah.
So you can have a very clean, kind of presency, crystal clean sound rolled down on a fuzz, and then this, fire breathing monster at 10. And there's other overdrive pedals that also do that. Another really good example of that is the Sonic Distortion. The SD9 is famously kind of like a really good cleanup pedal that guys like Michael Landau and Scott Henderson had famously used for a long time. And with Strats, I think that they really come alive. And most of those guys kind of run their volume controls around 6, and rarely get above that, because they find that the interaction with that pedal and that guitar allows them to kind of leave the pedal on all the time and then do all of the manipulation of saturation and stuff like that from the volume pot. And I wouldn't say that I rely on it in the same way that they do, but I do use it to create those sorts of shades, and sometimes instead of maybe clicking on a lesser gain overdrive, is just rolling your volume off 1 or 2 won't have an appreciable difference in output, but will considerably change the gain structure of the pedal.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things to try out and consider that I think are definitely worthwhile.
There's an area that I think we have to talk about here as well, which comes up in the context of when you set up your board and signal chain. And I can't tell you how many times I've had this exact same conversation, but chatting about a pedal board with someone, the order in which they've decided to run their pedals, and you guys will know exactly where I'm going here in just a second, but I see that they go guitar, maybe into a tuner, then into their volume pedal, then into their dry section, wet section out to the amp. And I always ask, why are you running your volume pedal up front? And I will preface it with, it's not wrong. I'm just curious what the reason is. Like, when you have the volume pot on your guitar, why is it that you then run your volume pot on your guitar and essentially into another volume pot that's pretty much the same thing right after it? And
That's a pot overdose.
It's a lot of pot, and we want to be responsible here. And so I always ask, like, have you ever tried running it after your gain stages? And most of the time, 7 or 8 times out of 10, like, oh, I never thought about that. And if you move your volume pedal from the front of your chain to after your overdrives and you do a volume swell, it will sound completely different. And what you're going to hear if you run it before your overdrives is the same as if you turn your guitar's volume pot down. You're going to clean up the sound of the overdrives when the volume goes lower. And then when you go to a 10, you're going to hear all the clipping and the gain come back in. And if you do the same thing, but volume is after your overdrives, you pull your volume pedal back. If you think logically, chain of events of what's happening is your signal has already been fully clipped, and then you're pulling the volume back. So at the bottom of that swell, you're going to hear all the texture of the overdrives all the way through, and you're just increasing the level of the volume, but not the interaction with the gain pedals. And so you'll get a totally different sound if you do this. And again, once these 70 or so % people have done the test and come back to me like, it's so much better. It's way better putting the volume after. And now they have both. Now you can clean up your sound on the volume pot in your guitar, and you can get a textured volume swell with the volume pedal, and you can interact, and you can, again, change kind of the sounds available to you very quickly just by changing the position of a pedal. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's when I see this question, that's one of the first things that comes to mind because I've had this conversation so many times. And I think it's well worth it if you're listening and have not tried this to do this test and start practicing pulling your volume pot back to get another wide range of sounds and textures available to you on your current existing gear. This is one of those things that you don't have to spend any money, and it'll feel like you've added another couple of pedals to your pedal board for free. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where this is one of those things where you can really expand your technical ability very quickly.
I completely agree. All right. Moving on, number 16, use traditional pedals with most multi-effects. I guess I would classify this as like a hybrid rig in a way. I guess we kind of do that. Yeah. So you'll see that a lot with like the quad cortex and additional pedals and stuff like that, or HX stomp and additional helix, all those kind of things. I think there is a time and place for them. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are running traditional overdrive pedals because they have that staple tube screamer that they've literally had since it was the birth gift that their parents got when their child was born. Like it's like they've had it literally their whole life. So like they have that glorious, some people say glorious tube screamer or whatever, like pedal or blues breaker or whatever, and then they have like it's the HX, the FX, it's like those multi effects like that, not the HX stomp, not the one. Is it the effects where it's like a couple rows? Yeah, the HX effects where it has like right
2 rows of switches.
HX effects has some, I think 2 effects loops.
Yeah,
and then HX stomp I think has one effects loop.
Yep. Yeah. So like the effects, like I've seen guys run like classic overdrives with the HX effects, and I've asked them like, well, why? They're like, oh, well, it has a bunch of different modulations and delays and reverbs and stuff that I can utilize that I really like, but it's also in this much smaller form platform size, and then they're running out to 2 amps, or they're running into an amp sim or something. So I think for that, for some people it's a great idea. I don't think it's for everyone, like I would say, but I do think it's a great concept, especially the HX effects is a great unit. I think it sounds cool, and it has a tuner. So I think
the more effects types you use in a single multi-effect, my biggest issue there is that you are it's like having a board only of Strymon effects, and there's nothing wrong with Strymon effects, but it sounds like a board filled with Strymon effects, and I want to have more variation than that typically. And that's where I think the closest I would get on this for myself, and again, this is my personal bias here, but the closest I would do is something like what we were chatting about earlier, where I'd have one multi-effect for the 20%, the things that I rarely use, but I want to have access to. And then everything else I'd have a dedicated effect for. But I could see very much a world, and we've done boards for people that have got something like the Quad Cortex, and then they'll put a couple of their favorite overdrives ahead before the Quad Cortex, and that's their kind of hybrid rig. That's great, and it makes for a nice compact board that's reliable, easy to use. Mm-hmm. But I think I would agree in the sense that it kind of depends what you're really after here. But I would say the most common in this realm, from what I've seen, would be get most of your favorite pedals as individual units, and then one multi-effect unit to kind of handle the 20%.
Yeah,
that's what I see. I think that's the best use case.
Yeah,
it's a very smart way to do it.
Yeah.
Mason, do you have any additional thoughts before we move on?
No, I'm in agreement with Grant's philosophy there. I think it's using it as a supplemental to the real thing.
Yeah. This next one just made me chuckle.
I'm very curious of your guys' thoughts on this next one, by the way.
Velcro no go. Try gel to stick pedals down.
There's a miss rhyme there. They should have Velcro no go. Try gel with a BOGO. I don't know. Like the rhyme could have been there in the title, but it was unfortunately wasn't. So far, that's my biggest problem with the article.
Dr. Seuss was on vacation when they wrote this.
Yeah, exactly.
They couldn't reach out.
Gel tape, such as Duck's Nano Grab.
I've heard about this gel tape before. I have never used it. I don't know that.
I'm looking it up.
I use it for PCBs. I will tell you this: if it's the same stuff that I use, it's a clear adhesive, so it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And this is some of the pros for this argument. The idea being, because we haven't read the article here, but the quick summary is that instead of Velcro or Dual Lock, use a double-sided gel tape to attach your pedals to your pedal board, and it sticks to Boss pedals, the rubber plate. It sticks to things that maybe Dual Lock or Velcro has a harder time sticking to. The good thing about the clear adhesive gel tape is it doesn't leave behind any residue. So if you needed to roll it off or pull it off your board, it's not going to leave that, that if you have a white adhesive, the white foam adhesive, it just stays on your board and it's a nightmare to get off. It doesn't do that. And so that's one thing that is good about it that I will say. The obvious downside here is if you ever want to swap a pedal out, this stuff, it's kind of like Dual Lock. If you overuse this stuff, it is hard to get off. Like it's strong stuff. So if you do go this route, don't overdo it. The downside though is if you want to replace a pedal, you need to replace the gel tape because you are breaking the adhesive bond. It's not breaking the connection between Dual Lock, it's breaking the adhesive. So dirt's going to get in there. The glue will only hold so many times. I think they might say in here that you can wash it and reuse it.
But it's not waterproof, it says.
But that's just I don't think I have enough experience to make it a definitive answer. It's one of those things that I could see people doing it, and sure, that's fine. It just feels wrong. It irks me in a way that is hard to put words to. I don't know. I can tell by your guys' reaction. Maybe you feel kind of the same here, but maybe I need to try it before I slam it.
After you're done, you could use it. You could use it to do a little touch up to the Manzillion.
You probably could. Just a little 40-year-old virgin here from the movie, where he just wax strips his chest.
My gosh. Yeah, no, I've never used it. It'd be interesting to see like how this would hold up on for like pedals going in like a pedals going in like a rack, like that kind of stuff, where like racks are taking a lot
more permanent.
Yeah, more permanent. Like I'm doing some Quad Cortex racks right now, and I see Bestronics, they do a bunch of Quad Cortex stuff. I have always done, 3 strips of really high grade Dual Lock, and I get so much crap about how much Dual Lock I'll use on an $1,800 pedal. And I'm like, it's $1,800 and you're dropping $15-20 on Dual Lock for the pedal. I think it's perfectly acceptable. But I'd be curious to see how it holds up in that standpoint. I'm not sure from like on the pedal board, on the floor, dirt and everything, how it holds up. It says in the article, let me pull it up. I was just googling the gel tape too. I might just get some just to try. I don't want to say I hate it or it's a no. I just have never used this. So this going off of the concept and the idea, I'm just a little worried.
They don't even mention dual lock in here, which is kind of not the same as Velcro.
Yeah.
I don't know if Dan at the Gig Rig uses dual lock, but pretty much every rig builder known to man that has done this for any extended period of time, from Robert Bradshaw to Dave Friedman to Dave Phillips at LA Sound Design, all those guys, all dual lock guys, so there's precedent, that's for sure.
Well, the other downside to the gel tape is it wouldn't give you enough clearance to run a cable 2314 under a pedal, whereas dual lock would.
Yeah.
Gel tape's pretty thin.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it wouldn't clear if you have a pedal with some bulky screws on it. Like some have rounded screws rather than countersunk screws. It wouldn't clear that. There's definitely, and you could say the same for dual lock or Velcro. There's times where it's maybe not the best fit for a particular job. But there are a few things where this stuff just would not be great.
Yeah, I also like dual lock because it just allows a little bit more room underneath the unit too for airflow, especially the quads. Like strategically placing the dual lock in spots where the air vents underneath still have room to breathe and everything. I think that's a big part of it. But yeah, they talk about Daniel with the pedal Gig Rig. He talks about how he often uses this such as Duck's Nano Grab brand to attach pedal support.
Yeah, it looks like it's like a standard. I'm looking at it here. It's on Amazon. It's at Target. It's at Michael's craft store. It's at Walmart. So I've seen this before. I hadn't recognized it, but it's like it's a.
I would be curious. I honestly might just go buy some just to try, just to see how it holds up. I'd be really curious. But you never know. Moving on. I know we only have a couple minutes left, so we'll run through some of these. Try a treble booster. Yeah.
Treble.
If you got trouble, try a treble.
Treble booster.
Treble booster.
Treble.
I don't know that I would say this is universally a good thing. I think there's certain amps that respond better to this than others. I think Marshalls respond well to it typically. I think Voxes respond well to it typically.
Mm-hmm.
But it's if you're getting a real one, it's a germanium boost. They do have some noise elements to them, and I think mostly the traditional use was to kind of try to break up an amp a little sooner by hitting the front end harder.
Yeah,
but it requires I think they do best with amps that are kind of almost already on the edge, and then you're hitting it with this to get it harder.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't play at that volume.
Mm-hmm.
I like treble boosters and I'll use them, but I'm in sort of this privileged position where I don't have my cabinets in the same room with me, so I'm listening to them back on monitors, and so I can have it be really loud, and I don't have to feel the effect of that. If it's in the room with you, you may not like treble boosters so much.
Yeah, I mean, that's when JHS released that treble booster pedal with that certain diode or whatever. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh yeah,
that one. It's like when they released that, and I had a
transistor.
Yeah. So and I had a bunch of clients that went and bought one, or some of them bought two because they just wanted to get in on the price, and because it was such a limited run. And I would say out of maybe 5 or 10 that had it, half of them were like, man, I hate it. I can't use it. I don't know how to use it. And it was always like, well, how are you running your amp? And like, oh, I'm running it. My amp's super clean or something. Like, okay, well, like there's stuff like what you're just saying. Like, it's not for everyone. The application in which how you have to run your amp to get it to really shine, I think, really depends. What about you, Grant?
I don't have much experience with treble boosters. To push the amp harder, I would typically use something, a transparent-ish overdrive or an EQ, and that's where I'd normally go with it. But again, with not having much experience with these, I had a Rangemaster years ago, a Rangemaster clone. I can't remember the company that made Joyride, that big red overdrive pedal.
It wasn't divided by 13, was it?
I think that's what it was. Yeah, divided by 13. I had to Rangemaster, and it was so noisy to the point where I thought it was broken. I never got it fixed. And but yeah, the noise thing was real. But I mean, I got some good sounds out of it. But I would say for my very limited experience, I still preferred putting an EQ or a boost at the end of my signal, and I was able to push the amp that way. So by no means, you can't argue with some of the people that use these things, and they sound incredible. So I just, I don't think I've put in enough time to say anything definitively with the treble booster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No worries. Well, second to last, 20, right? There's only 20. Okay, yeah. So second to last, we got Mend It in the Blend. Aha, we got our fourth chairman who just joined us.
Oh, yeah.
You woke up, Oakley?
Chairman number 4.
You say.
So for those that can't hear, Oakley is chatting about his favorite treble booster. He just came into the room, and he's got opinions. Let me tell you, this kid knows what he's talking about.
He says his favorite. He said his favorite is a treble booster. Hi, buddy.
Say hi.
You probably can't hear us because you have headphones on.
It's not the truck.
He's just like, who's waving at me? Basically, this last one, some modern compression pedals and overdrives will let you blend in some dry signal in with the effect signal chain. You'll find this useful feature on pedals such as the Cali 76 Stacked or the Jam pedals, Lucy Dreamer overdrive, and it basically gives you a way to achieve a balance of natural, clearly defined, and straight into the amp guitar tone. What are you guys' thoughts? Yeah? No?
This is another 4-knob overdrive situation for me. Especially I think when I think dry through and basically what's happening is they're taking a parallel dry line and sending it straight to the output, bypassing the effect and allowing you to dial in however much you want. And I don't think whenever there's I'll back up one step. I think it's easy to see, let's say, 2 identical compressors, one with a parallel dry or a dry blend and the other without, and to think that the one with the parallel dry is better. And I just don't think that's the case. I think it's an option that some people will connect with. But typically, I have, again, never been in the situation where I have a 3-knob compressor. Like, I wish there was a parallel dry here. I'm really it just doesn't happen to me. Yeah. And again, that's my very limited experience before you all hate on me. But I just, to say something blunt, I think it's more gimmicky than it is useful in let's say, at least for compressors.
I think it's also a drawback in some cases because sometimes the clean bleed can create almost like a weird artifact in the signal if it's too exaggerated. Mm-hmm. So I think that it can be useful for compressors. I would agree with that. I think in some overdrives it can be useful, but honestly, I feel like for an example of this is like the Sparkle Drive from Voodoo Lab, which is a tube screamer with a clean blend. I don't know that that's so useful for me as a guitar player, but it is very useful for bass players that want to use that effect to have that parallel control. I think for guitar players, it's less valuable. Again, outside of compression, I think it's less valuable. I think some people may think that it gives you like more articulation or some of this other stuff, but I always felt like the feel to me could get weird if it was too exaggerated. Like, so even on pedals where we do it, like on our Steel String series, we have a few versions that have a blend of the clean control.
Yeah.
And I'm almost treating that like a compression in the circuit. And it's more about sort of modulating sort of how much of the dry signal is going to be present in the compression aspect of what the pedal is doing. Because basically one of the stages in there is almost working similarly to how a compressor would work. And that's the only reason why I would put that in there. I wouldn't ordinarily add clean controls to any of our pedals. But that's just how I hear things. And as I've said in other videos, and I think even this article says like, find your tribe. you'll find that there are certain pedal makers that you just naturally gravitate to in the way that they hear things. It lines up with the way that you hear things. And so, those are often people to trust if you find that you are in alignment with sort of their build philosophy and, sort of sonic palette, and that you kind of align with those things. So in any case, that's what I think on that one.
Yeah. Well, I know we have about a minute or so left, and we just got to finish up. But I will say the last point, number 20, I would say is probably the most technical of them all. It just says try everything. So he just, I think,
not buy everything.
Not buy, yeah.
Try
TRY, not BY. So. Yeah, go to your local guitar store and try out stuff. If you're local to Sweetwater, go there. They definitely have a lot of options for stuff. Or if you're in Canada, go to a guitar shop there. Or just show up at Grant's house and ask him. Just show up at Grant's house. His address is in the description below. Just kidding. No.
Appreciate you.
He's like, I got it to screw. No.
He lives at 123 Main Street in Vancouver, Canada.
So I definitely, there's nothing I can say, but yeah, go do it. Try it out. Some people like stuff, some people don't. Everyone's tone has a different taste. Some people, it's like going to Olive Garden. You got Alfredo, you got pasta, you got meatballs, you got all these options.
Breadsticks.
So breadsticks. If you just like bread, I love bread, and it's just the best. So, if you may be gluten free, so you can't.
How
eat
many times a week
bread.
Are you at the Olive Garden?
Honestly, I wish it was 2 or 3, but it's maybe once every couple of weeks. It's worth it though. It's expensive, but it's okay. But
that's just get a taste of Tuscany.
Taste the Tuscany. I love that. Good. Yeah. So that's I would just say, do it. Try it. There's no harm in trying something. You may hate it, and then no harm. So that's it for me. Final thoughts.
Love it. No, 20 points. We made it across 2 episodes, but we made it.
This is good. Well, just a quick reminder before we finish. Again, we have a fantastic Facebook group that is called, if you could believe it, Chairmen of the Boards. And we recommend that you join us over there if you haven't already. And it is a great, free, easy community to connect with us. Grant, Brian, and I are all there as administrators. We are often interjecting commentary and questions into the various threads that are going on there. So I recommend that you join us there. Write us a review on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. And see you guys all next week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.